Involving the Workforce Community of Interest, formerly known as the Human Capital Shared Interest Group, and want to welcome all of you, both attendees in the room, attendees online, and our presenters to our November meeting. First, I'd like to go around the room here in the room in Washington and have each person briefly identify themselves, and then we'll do the same thing with those of you online so that we can have a sense of who's participating this morning. And then we're going to change our standard operating procedure and we'll go directly into the presentations. We have two great presentations, and then after the presentations we've got about 10 minutes worth of community of interest, or what we will now be calling COI, community of interest business. But first, we'll just go around the room, and if each of you will give your name, your position, and what organization you're with, that would be helpful to us. And there is a sign-up list going around as well. But let's just start with you, sir.
Sure. Dave Potts, principal at North Highland Company.
Lisa O'Quinn, Regional Outreach Specialist for University of Virginia.
Mark McClendon, CEO of FPMI Solutions.
Brian Cohen, Business Development Lead with Lockheed Martin.
Terry Schaefer, GSA's Employee Relocation Resource Center.
Layla Bayside, GSA
Sir, John Weir, Senior Program Manager, Leapfrog Solutions.
So we always have a little bit of a challenge with folks on the line because we can't see you. Let me first ask for anyone whose last name starts between A and C, please identify yourself.
Hey, good morning. This is Tim Bowden. I'm an Executive Director and Consulting with Management Concepts.
Thank you, Tim. Others, A to C? How about D to G?
This is Kathleen Delano. I'm the CEO of PMIC Incorporated.
Others, D to G? H to M?
Good morning, Bob. This is Kevin Hall with the Monster Government Solutions team.
Good morning, Kevin.
Hi, Bob. This is Brian Kendrick with Acela Consulting.
Morning, Brian. Anyone else through M? Let's try N to S. And let's try T to Z. Is there...
Hi, this is Mark Human at ICF International.
Thank you, Mark. Anyone else on the line who did not get a chance? It sounds like a couple people joining. Anyone else who did not get a chance to identify themselves? Well, thank you very much, and I'll ask those of you on the phone to please put your phones on mute, and there will be an opportunity for questions at the end of each of the two presentations, but if you'll keep your lines on mute, that would be very helpful. This morning, we are fortunate to have two speakers, both of whom are going to speak on topics that are related to acquisitions. Typically, given that this is a group that is formed around human capital, we have worked on topics that are directly human capital related: recruiting, workforce planning, human capital data analysis, that kind of thing. And in our last meeting, we focused we started looking at some of the distinct workforces that exist within the federal community, last session being on the DoD healthcare community. We started looking at other large communities across federal, and one of them is certainly the acquisition workforce. And as we were putting some thought on that, and hopefully each of you who are on the line got a chance to get the PowerPoint, the 2-page PowerPoint flyer that I put out, and at the bottom of it, it has our sessions for December, which will be on the cybersecurity workforce, and January will be on the acquisitions workforce. And as we were thinking about the acquisitions workforce, we got an opportunity to get 2 speakers on 2 programs that both relate to the acquisitions workforce, but also relate to human capital professionals outside of acquisitions, but who need to know what resources are available to them. So the first speaker we've got today is Laura Stanton, who's going to be speaking with us about category management and some broader work that she's doing. So I will get out of the way and ask Dr. Stanton to give us a few words. So,
thank you. This is Laura Stanton. I don't actually get the honorific of doctor, though, you know, maybe someday. So in any case, what I wanted to talk to you about is talk about category management in the acquisition gateway. And one of the things that we discussed in preparing for this session is how does this relate back to human capital? So let me just tell you how I see the linkages. We certainly can discuss it in the Q&A as well. There's a couple of things. There's the aspect of category management being an organizing principle about how the government spends, how the government looks at its budget, analyzes it, of which human capital, recruitment, training, support, all of those things have their own category. So you very clearly have a large amount of money being spent on human capital contracting services, just based on the demographic of the people in this room. We're seeing a number of quite a bit of industry interest. The second piece is the acquisition gateway is a tool for the acquisition workforce. So that clearly falls under the human capital. What tools are available for our workforces? How do they do their jobs? How do their jobs evolve? And then there's the third aspect of human capital related to category management, which is as category management moves forward, I also see it, and this is an area that's a little less defined at this point. It's really the opportunity to begin to raise the level and the engagement that the contracting officers are giving to the business units. So you also have a potential, you have the opportunity for transformation of human capital in the 1102, the contracting officer community, to provide a different type of support to the business offices. And that becomes critical. I was at the Executive Leadership Conference 3 weeks ago now, and one of the things that we heard over and over again is that the contracting officers need to provide business intelligence to the acquisition, to the program office. The requirements need to be built by a collaborative team that consists of the program office, the contracting office, the financial office, legal as appropriate, and that oftentimes that this isn't happening. And there's a number of reasons for that we can talk about as we go through. So I also see category management in the acquisition gateway as a way to begin to get different sets of tools to begin to transform that contracting officer workforce. So there's a number of strong linkages back to human capital that I think we can touch on throughout this conversation. But let me start out with the basics. I know this is much more of a human capital focused group, so let me start out by describing category management. It's an approach that Office of Federal Procurement Policy is using to really have the government look at how do we buy more as a single enterprise, how do we reduce the fragmentation, and how do we engage with the markets differently for the things that the government wants to buy. So it involves looking at where are we spending the federal budget. This federal budget, over $400 billion of it is spent on contracting resources, and on outside support. And that includes everything from the human capital to buying an office supply to buying an aircraft carrier. So that is everything that the government buys, but 400 billion plus is a significant amount of spend. So what category management does, and I'll show you how they do it in a minute, is they actually have broken this out into 19 different categories and subcategories about how the government purchases. It's really developing better expertise. And this expertise is how does the private sector, how do large companies in the private sector buy the types of things that the government does, for those that are appropriate. Clearly the private sector is not buying aircraft carriers, but they are buying human capital support, professional services, buildings, construction. So how are they doing it? What are the best practices? How do we identify those best practices in a way that we can share them across the government? And then how do we look at our demand management, how we engage with the supplier community, and how do we look at the acquisitions we put in place to leverage both the government's requirements and those best practices in a more orchestrated way. So one of the challenges, category management has been used in the private sector for a number of years. It's Fortune 500 companies. You'll hear somebody often say, "Well, my company is contracted with Marriott, or they're contracted with Hilton." The government it doesn't quite work that way. We have been working on strategic sourcing for the past 10 years. So we're moving more in that direction, but category management has been long applied within Fortune 500. Starting in 2008, the UK government implemented category management. They did it and they began looking at how do they spend their budgets, where can they begin to actually reduce. They were in a fiscal crisis and were put in a position where they had to cut significant amounts of money. We're not in that position, but on the other hand, we do think that we can be buying better and be thinking about how we spend our budget better. Last December, so 11 months ago, OFPP began moving us in that direction when Anne Rung released a memo describing the actions that she wants to take for category management, how she wants it structured, and she also touches on the acquisition workforce in there and the role of the acquisition workforce in category management. And GSA is working on implementing category management. We're working on a couple of different levels. We're supporting OFPP on the government-wide, and Layla, who is in the back, one of her responsibilities is to support government-wide category management. The second piece is, so we are supporting the government-wide category managers that will be named next month. And then internally, the Federal Acquisition Service is organizing itself along the lines of category management and beginning to expand our own focus in how we think about categories. And that's what Terry's responsibility, another GSAer who's in the room with us, is part of her responsibility for employee relocation. So there's several activities, and so it's easy to get sort of mixed up about which ones there are, but which is why I sort of wanted to walk through it clearly. So there is, as I said, there's significant fragmentation in how the government purchases. We have over 500 contracting offices who are often buying as if they are they are the only office. So as opposed to looking for common requirements, looking for common contracts across, we have the same purchases being executed over and over again. And I know on the industry side, you're feeling that because you're seeing the RFQs and the RFPs coming out over and over again, looking for exactly the same types of things. So when we look at that fragmentation, there's a strong belief that that the category management organization will help move us in a different direction. So where we are with that, and I know that those in the room may not be able to see this chart, I mentioned earlier that there's 19 different categories. The top chart, the first 10 that are in the light blue, comprise what we refer to as the common government spend categories. And if you notice number 9 up there is human capital with $4.1 billion of spend. This data was all pulled out of the Federal Procurement Data System, which has its pluses and minuses, but it does give us it gives us a good overview at least of how money is being spent above the micro-purchase threshold. So the light blue categories are the ones that OFPP are looking at in the short term. Then the ones below are the defense-centric, law enforcement-centric categories that really would be used obviously by DOD, DHS plays in some of them with the Coast Guard, with some of the Marine craft, things like that. But those are much more defense or law enforcement centric. So in the light blue categories, we're talking about $275 billion that we're working to structure. We're working to think through what's the broader category, what are the subcategories, how do we determine, and part of what we're trying to figure out is even how do we begin to move the government into thinking about this as one. So how do we begin actually achieving the goal of improving how we purchase, how we manage the spend? We are looking at implementing the government-wide category management operating model and governance structure. What does that mean? Bottom line is naming a category manager for each of the light blue categories. OFPP is currently working on that. Having those category managers look at the data out of FPDS, look at other data sources, understand what the market is, understand what the best buying practices are, and really begin to leverage that information to create a strategy for the government to engage in that category. And that is going to be governed by what's referred to as the Category Management Leadership Council, which is comprised of the top 7 spend agencies. And those agencies consist obviously DOD, DHS, GSA. I believe there's a list online of all of them if you want all 7. So building that that strategic category plan, and in there really establishing what the goals are, what the metrics are, collecting the data on the best practices, what terms and conditions do we need to have in these contracts. For example, if you look at commercial supplier agreements for software, GSA recently put a clause in that all of our that certain common provisions or terms and conditions in the commercially available software licenses are not ones the government can agree to. So actually knowing that, and so you have contracting officers able to pull that information from a single repository, get the common terms and conditions, begin to collect the prices paid data. So oftentimes, even in the same offices, but definitely across agencies and outside of agencies, we're paying, we can research it. We're seeing the laptops, desktops. We're seeing that we had a 300% difference in price for the same models. So this isn't just about price, but it's also it is about reducing some of that price variability so that we can see that we're paying more consistent pricing. Determine what categories we really want to focus on, and then enabling category management so that all of the work that I'm talking about is really at the strategic level. And what the acquisition gateway does is it connects the right information that the category team puts together actually down to the workforce. So it's the tool that brings that information down to the program office, down to the contracting officer, in a way that they can then read it and they can actually begin to integrate it and make their acquisition decisions based on it. So here's the category. This is a horrible chart, but it is the operating model that I referenced earlier is doing the category planning. And this isn't done by the category manager in a vacuum. This is done with the high spend agencies. So understanding who's buying human capital. And I honestly don't know what top agencies are buying human capital support, but who's buying it, bringing them to the table, and beginning to form a category team that supports the development of the strategy. The strategy then should identify demand levers, supplier management. Are we all working with the same companies? Are we getting consistent results from the companies? How do we engage with our suppliers? how do we do total cost management, and then also where are appropriate opportunities for strategic sourcing. And what you'll hear Alex talk about next is where there is a strategic sourcing initiative underway already in human capital. So then actually executing those demand levers, and then obviously managing performance, and then starting over to use that all to input into the next year's strategy. This is another horrible chart. Basically, this lays out that the CMLC is the key, is the governing body over the category managers. The category team, the category manager forms the category team, and then as they drive, and then there's also what are referred to as L2s, which are those subcategories that you can see on your charts as well. And then the commodity teams are the ones who would actually be supporting an acquisition such as HCATs and working to make sure that for that acquisition, all of their requirements and that the requirements that are in there, that there's agreement on how it's going to, the business model, how it's going to be organized and so on. And that's all done across agencies so that we have the buy-in as we move forward. Then this is supported by the category management PMO, which is part of, and then the common acquisition platform in the form of the acquisition gateway. So, and those are both, those are the two organizations that are part of my office. So I talked a bit about the common acquisition platform and the acquisition gateway. And this is really, as I said, it's the connecting point to bring you in, to really get the information on category management down to the contracting officer, to the program officers making these decisions. And we're doing that to really improve federal agency performance by giving them the data, the best practices, the sample statements of work, all of those, and lists of the existing contracts so that people can actually use all of that data as opposed to hunting it out on their own. Driving smarter acquisition and then ultimately enabling good category management of the missions there. Where we want to be, our vision is to become where the government acquisition workforce works. And having the programs, having the data, having the tool, having not only data but also tools that simplify the acquisition process. And our value proposition is really that we want to be able to build this tool that will allow the contract solutions, the industry expertise, all of those things to be shared. Currently, and I think many of you know this, the acquisition gateway is available to federal employees only. It will be opened up at the end of next month. So we're currently not everything will be visible, but large pieces of it will be. So one of the things we're working through as we make those decisions is what's appropriate to open and what needs to be government only. So those are some of the decisions being made right now with our FOIA office. So the idea is that we want to increase transparency across acquisitions and give people access to really understand what's happening in their categories, connect to others through community and talk to others, and then use that in order to, as they make their own decisions. So I was hoping that I could do a demo, but I'm not going to be able to do that today, to walk you through sort of a demo of this. But if you go to the hallways, if you go to the acquisition gateway site, there is a series of FAQs. If you're a government employee, you can log in. If you are not a government employee, there's a series of FAQs, and there is a video walkthrough of the site available that you can see, as well as more information on category management as well. So, but what this screen shows is what I was talking about. Down the left-hand side, you have the category, what we refer to as the hallways. And those are the category hallways that contain the information. It contains the contracts, it contains expert articles, it contains the community, and any digital tools that are available. In the center, you have the project center. And that allows somebody, if I was looking at conducting an acquisition, it would allow me to begin to upload information, events. I can pull information from other parts of the gateway that I want to be able to refer to as I go through my acquisition. As we build this out further, you're going to be able to collaborate with your teams in this space as well. That's within the next quarter. What we have down here at the left is the Solutions Finder. And the Solutions Finder really lets you specify what agency you're from, what category are you interested in seeing the contracts in, and then ultimately, if there's a subcategory, and then what it does is it pulls up all of the government-wide contracts that are available in that space. And some of this may sound like we're just beginning to, where we started is, that didn't exist. So, and then we started just collecting the information on PDF documents, and we launched this about 6 months ago. So it may seem fairly simplistic compared to your private sector life, or consumer, your personal life in the consumer world. However, in the government world, this is actually quite exciting. We have some other resources there. eBuy Open allows you to see all of the eBuy RFQs from the past year and a half. The prices paid information that we've collected. Community is over on the right, and then there's also a news feed over there as well. So that's the type of information that people are able to access by going in and looking at the gateway. So, since we passed in the demonstration, I'll just go directly to my contact information and open it up for questions, because I know that was an awful lot of sort of me talking. So let me open it up for any questions that people might have.
Let's go first for questions in the room. Anyone in the room have questions for?
I have a question. Thanks, Laura. This is exciting. Looking forward to seeing this roll out. What are some of the bigger challenges that the PMO is facing right now in rolling this out?
So the question is, what challenges is the PMO facing? So I think it's a number of things. In fact, I'm not quite sure where to start. To be honest, it's very difficult to get the data. It's difficult to, all of you know this, it's challenging to find prices paid data, it's challenging to find good statements of work, it's getting people to participate in sharing information is always challenging. Most of the government culture is not particularly transparent when it comes to that. In terms of launching the category management side, I'm actually very excited that OFPP is going to name the category managers next month. I think that's a huge step forward, and it'll give us a real opportunity. I think my sense is there's a number of initiatives that have been happening around a lot of these categories, and they haven't had anything to sort of act as a magnet to bring everything together. And I may be hopelessly naive and anticipate much greater results than we see, but I want to sort of keep that optimism and believe that putting somebody in place who not only industry can sort of say, here's best practices that we really want to see the government take on, because there's a lot of opportunity here, but also there begins to be somewhere for the government initiatives to sort of go and begin sharing information. And I really feel that we've had that gap. So I think getting that launched, because there's so much out there, these categories are so broad. When we've shared them with private industry, their response is, that's really big. They don't even know quite where to start, because they're so much bigger than what private industry categories are made up of. So I think it's the scope and the scale that are going to be tough at the start. Yes?
I just want to comment, Laura had mentioned that I'm involved with the employee relocation category. So I actually came out of private sector, worked for another agency, and now with GSA. And I have to say, seeing it all come together like this is a huge transition for government. It's really going in a positive direction where everybody will have the place to go for information on a particular category. So as it evolves, the suppliers, when it's going to be open to the public, everyone will be seeing the same information, speaking the same language, and it's a very positive shift, but it'll take time, and the adoption of it will take time.
Thank you, Terry. That was Terry from GSA, and she was just talking about what a transformational shift this is for the government. And that actually hits on, I sort of omitted talking about that I do see this as a transformational shift for the acquisition workforce. That having this type of information, having the tools that we plan to put into the gateway, the intent is that is going to be able to take a lot of sort of help with the market research, streamline a lot of the activities that this contracting officer spends significant time on, and the program office does, and begin to by streamlining those activities, allow the contracting officers to really understand the category better, understand the best practices, understand how they can help the program office achieve its mission goals. And that will be, that collaboration is going to be a big transformation for the acquisition workforce. And that's where I see a lot of the opportunity, though, is bringing, if you listen to what the senior procurement executives say, they want to be that business intelligence for their program offices. And this, I believe, offers them a path to begin to do it. So that is a key. So there's a number of aspects of transformation that are going to be occurring. And going back to the challenges question, whenever you're managing that type of change, that becomes complicated and hard because it's everyone's affected, and the expectations around what they should be doing should be evolving as well.
Is there any type of performance or satisfaction metric assigned with all of these, contracts? Because you can have, say, a company X looking at, here's a statement of work, here's the price they paid, but that doesn't necessarily mean that it was the right decision, and you don't want to make that same mistake again. So I understand how some of that could be, I don't want to say proprietary, but maybe you don't want it to be public. But is there any type of satisfaction or performance metric that is available for people to look at as far as the services obtained in these contracts?
So there's CPARs,
Okay.
Which rates the companies on how they do. That data is available to contracting officers. It's not available to the broader government community.
Okay.
So and that's a policy decision. So one of the things that we've tried to look at is how do we get certain satisfaction measures without violating the policy side of it. Like, for example, if we look at GSA Advantage, which is an online buying platform, how could we rate the experience without really rating the performance of the company? And some of that comes down to, if you're looking at an item, is there a picture? Did you get what you anticipated that you were buying? So getting to some of those things, we're working, we want to get to those types of measures, we want to get to that type of engagement so we can get the feedback, but we're having to work that very closely with legal staff.
You mentioned that performance metrics will be something on category managers' plates. Is there initial thinking right now about what some performance metrics might be?
So the question is there initial thinking around what our anticipated performance metrics might be? They have been, OMB has put in place some metrics on the cross-agency priority goals for the IT category. If you want to see where some of this may be going, look at the influence that FTAR is having on getting to single software licenses, getting to better management of existing software licenses. Those are the type, while those strategies are appropriate for software, those are the types of demand management strategies and the thinking that would be put into other categories as well. What they're looking at there for the performance metrics are savings. What are the savings coming out, and that's being measured by individual agencies. The second is reduction of contracts, so we don't have as many duplicative contracts across the board. The acquisition gateway, looking at the number of users, because the hypothesis is that if the acquisition gateway is being used, we should see some of these best practices being spread across the government. It's a hypothesis anyway. That we're certainly hoping it's going to play out. Those are the key metrics that they've been looking at right now.
Just a quick follow-up to that. So with other agencies like a VA or DHS, they've got their contracts and vehicles as well. Any insight into how they're doing as far as using this acquisition gateway and even moving towards category management? Are they struggling to kind of get on board with it, or are they moving towards this area?
Right. So a couple of things. The question was how are like DHS and some of the other agencies sort of implementing category management? How are they using the gateway? there's been engagement across the board on the IT side of category management. The other categories just haven't rolled out as much because we haven't named the category managers yet. So give me 6 months and I'll be able to give you a much better answer, David. The second piece on that is the gateway. The gateway usage is growing. We were very deliberate in how we rolled out the gateway. We've been using agile development. We rolled it out last October. Some of you have heard me say these things before. We rolled it out with 3 category hallways. And so we wanted to be cautious in our adoption, that we weren't asking people to come in when there wasn't a lot of value in there for them. We've asked people to come in and play, give us feedback and anything. So just at the end of June, we got to the point where we felt we had hit a critical mass of actual usable information. And so we've been slowly ramping up adoption. We've been focused a lot on internal GSA adoption in the short term. Our favorite, get our own people to try it out first. And but we are doing the outreach and working to engage with the other agencies to discover what do they need in here for it to be valuable to them. I just had the same conversation with our public building service earlier this week. What are we missing? What could make this a much more valuable tool for how you buy facilities and construction? So those are really the conversations that we're having a lot. But we are beginning to see the momentum growing. And like any network, the more people you get in, the more valuable it becomes.
So clearly the tools represented by the gateway are phenomenal in terms of business intelligence and analytics and contract officers. What is some of the early feedback that you've been getting from the people who have used it so far? And what kind of activities are you thinking about for organizational change management as you roll this out to the contracting officers so they're aware of these tools that they have?
So a couple of fronts. So the question was, what are we doing on, so what's the feedback been on the gateway? The second piece is, what's our organizational change management to help agencies figure out how to use this effectively? So the feedback that we've gotten on the gateway has been a range. Some people, just having the contracts available to them in the solutions finder is a phenomenal thing. And that would have changed their entire sort of workload, being able to do that market research simpler. Some of the tools that have been rolled out, such as Kelp, that have all of the labor rates, at least the prices that are on the professional services schedule, labor rates, also streamline a lot of that research. Others, such as the public building service, gave me feedback that we're not there yet for them. So I think it really depends. We've spent a lot of time building up the IT side of it, and I think that that's more robust than we're seeing in some of the other areas. This is another area though where one of Layla's jobs is working on getting that content from the government-wide side. And so I really think we're going to see a lot more content coming in over the next couple of months as well to build up some of those gaps. Where we've been doing the change management has been along the lines of we've been doing a lot of user testing with individuals. We have our own, we've trained our own user testers, so we do somewhere between 3 to 5 sessions a week in user testing to make sure we're hitting the right needs. The other piece is on a broader change management. We've been working a lot with the senior procurement executives at different agencies. We've been working with the CIOs, the CAOs, and taking it in front of their workforce and walking them through the tool. We're trying to, much of it's been very hands-on to help with that change management, because it is a slightly different tool than people have seen before. So that's been a lot of where it's happening. We're beginning to do deeper dives with a couple of agencies and really work with them to get them to be, to build out to their needs, so that, and with the understanding that if one set of acquisition experts in an agency needs this, we anticipate that other agencies are going to need the same types of tools. Yes?
So let's fast forward to 3, 4, 5 years from now, and Laura Stan, you've done it. You've rolled out category management. It's been a wild success. What does the end game look like? What does success look like for your solution?
That's an interesting question. I think it's so a couple of pieces on what do we see where do I see the long-term success? And is really changing the engagement with the marketplace. It's the government understanding, one, where do we play in the marketplace? What percentage of this market are we actually buying? In IT, it's very small. In other markets, it's much bigger. So how do the government understands where should we be looking at using enterprise contracts? Where should we be looking at using much more local or regional contracts? What should our demand management strategies be? Do we have resources such as, let's take software licenses that are sitting around because we just aren't managing them well? Or so even understanding how we're buying, what's being bought, how we're managing those items. I think bringing this is the opportunity to really bring those best practices in and implement them across the government. So I think that we should be able to answer a lot more of the very fundamental questions around how we're buying in these categories in 5 years.
The Department of Defense is clearly a large procurer, and I saw on your categories you've got a number of defense-oriented things. What's their level of involvement in the program so far? Right?
So DoD has they've been active. They actually have put up they put up the small package delivery hallway. So they're partnering. So even though GSA is building the gateway and one of the leaders in category management, we are collaborating across the government to accomplish that. DoD is also one of the key members on the Category Management Leadership Council, and they have already they have some category management across the different services. For example, the Air Force has been moving in this direction for some time, and some of the other services have been thinking about this, have been thinking in these ways as well, I believe DLA. So I think it's the opportunity to bring together what's happening often in individual, we're hearing the same thing in civilian agencies as well, that agencies have begun to implement category management principles and they've been moving towards it. So I think this is an opportunity to get it sort of from the top, all the way from the top, starting with OMB in the White House, all the way down to the actual contracting officer's program office. So DoD is definitely a player, and I anticipate that they're going to be a key member on any team. I have time for I'm afraid I have to run at 1:45, so I have time for maybe one more question.
Questions from remote. Who's got a burning question on the line? Going once. Going twice.
Well, thank you very
Laura,
much.
thank you very much. That was very helpful and insightful. And now we will do a transition to Alexandra Rouse, who's going to be talking to us about the HCATS program.
I need help with the
And
slides.
I can probably move that over. And Laura, you might, Alexandra, you might want to say whatever caveats you need up front.
Okay. Well, I'll just do a quick introduction of myself. I'm Alexandra Rouse. I work for General Services Administration. Right now I'm the Acting Professional Services Program Executive, and HCATS is one of the programs that I'm overseeing. As you may know, HCATS is one of the tools that we will be that the category management is drilling down into. So with that, let me just get situated with my slides and give a deeper understanding. So basically, as Laura alluded to, there's a lot of there's 10 different categories that are civilian focused, and human capital is one of them. OPM is serving as the category executive for that. So they're the ones that are responsible for building the hallway that Laura went over in her presentation. OPM and HCATS and the HCATS Small Business Solutions, which is currently on the street right now, will be a tool within their human capital category. GSA serves as the contracting arm for these vehicles. We have the acquisition expertise. We will be conducting the delegated procurement authority once the solutions launch. And we will be maintaining the contract administration of the HCAT's vehicles, while OPM is really the program lead. They will be the PMO. They have the subject matter expertise, and they will also, for agencies that want to have the contracting done on their behalf, OPM will serve as the core or the project manager in those instances. And they are also going to be establishing a community of practice to maintain the best lessons learned, have examples of statements of work that other agencies have done, just kind of serve as a repository for government so they can see what HR contracts are out there. They will have an agnostic view of all HR human capital training solutions within their category, and they're just, as I said, they're the subject matter expert. So, to dive into HCATs, I know there's some questions about what it is exactly. It's going to be a multiple award contract, an IDIQ contract. It's designed for unique human capital and training requirements. They're offering customizable solutions, so it's a complement to the Schedules program, which is more of a commercial off-the-shelf type solution. It's also OPM's TMA contract, as some of you may know, is expiring this year. This is going to be the vehicle that OPM will be using in its place. It has a broader scope of human capital and training solutions. It has a flexible task order award. For example, you will be able to do labor hour, time and materials, firm fixed price, even cost type contracts under this vehicle. It also helps agencies stay aligned with the human capital assessment and accountability framework, which many government agencies, basically that's the governing body that different agencies have to follow as they're building the strategic plan for their training for their employees, the senior executive professional trainings, and just kind of the management of all things human capital within the agencies. This information is reported to OPM, which in turn shares it with OMB. So with the way that it's designed, we've basically, as long as it touches human capital type services and professional training services, the work can be customizable and it's flexible. We also recognize that with a lot of these solutions, you know, sometimes there's an ancillary piece where IT may play a role. If the primary work falls under the umbrella of human capital, professional services, then it would be under the HCAT's umbrella. I suspect that there might be some questions on that later. As I had mentioned earlier, we're also looking to offer 2 service models for the federal community. One of them is the agencies will have a self-service model. So for example, Department of Interior wants to conduct their own procurement, great. GSA will extend a delegated procurement authority to the Department of Interior for them to conduct their own acquisitions. Let's say Department of Interior doesn't have the resources or doesn't have the time, whatever, they're looking to HCATs to contracting team to do the work for them, then they would work with OPM on that, and then GSA would end up conducting the acquisition for them with OPM serving as a project manager. Part of their, part of OPM's agreement to be the human capital category executive is that they will be compiling a lot of information on HCATs, who's past contracts, prices paid, that sort of thing. All the things that Laura alluded to in her presentation with business intelligence, OPM will be containing within their hallway under the category management platform, which Laura went over, which is kind of exciting because that's never happened before. And then that allows the end users to see what's out there. Can I use this existing contract? Can I just issue a task order? It saves them time, it saves energy, it saves resources, and reduces the duplication of contracts. So, we've been quite busy over the last year and a half building out these vehicles. We have worked extensively conducting market research. We've met with our government colleagues, particularly through our commodity team, which Laura alluded to. We've been sharing our strategies with this team. They are the largest buyers of this particular commodity within the government. So we've been trying to find out from them, okay, is this something that's meaningful to you? What's missing? How do we make it better? We've also been engaging industry in the same way. Is this something that's going to work for you? Is this something that your clients are asking for? Is this something, does this fall into your niche? How do we make this better? The government recognizes we're big, and sometimes we get in the way of ourselves with trying to make an easier acquisition. So based on the success of Oasis and what we heard from that customer base there and from industry, we did a lot of the activities that we conducted through HCATS, and the actual solution itself is very similar to our sister contract with the Oasis solution. So we've also, I digressed a little bit, but again, we engaged the government at all levels to include the Chico Council. We got their blessing. We've briefed the Category Management Leadership Council several times on the progress of the solution. We have their blessing, and we've engaged industry several times through either GSA Interact, where we have informal communication. We post questions. We've received over 1,500. They've all been addressed on Interact. We've spoken to the Professional Services Council. We've spoken at ACT-IAC conferences, and we've also had several meetings with the Coalition for Government Procurement as well. So, got ahead of myself there, but like I said, the primary link for us to communicate is through Interact. Through there, we include our postings, or we provide links to FedBizOps, which is the formal way that industry would respond to our solicitations. But we also know that FedBizOps isn't always the most user-friendly. So we've been trying to make sure that anything and everything that's going to hit FedBizOps is also communicated through our HCATS weblog. Just so we're trying to attack as many channels as possible. All right. So for the overall scope of HCATS really boils down to these three areas. The main focuses are within the customizable training and development services, which revolves around customized training and employee development services. We also are looking, or the scope also includes the human capital strategies to include the more operational aspects, typically at a headquarters level, but not necessarily, but to include the strategy, performance management, employee relations. Basically, a lot of the data that gets fed to OPM would fall under that key service area. And then the third is the organizational performance improvement. It's just the strategies to fill gaps where we need to have specialized services to successfully run an agency, the senior executive performance, change management, that sort of thing. That is the crux of what HCATS really is about. So like Oasis, we followed the Small Business Jobs Act, and we have aligned ourselves primarily with eight NAICS codes that cover HCATS KSAs. Contracting officers always have to pick a single NAICS code for their contract. So we tried to keep it as easy as possible for them with the regulation. We've also tried to organize it based on size standards, so government knows which pool to go to, which companies would offer the best fit for what they're looking to do, and then they can also see where they would get small business credit. So that's the basis for our structure. We have the same pools in the small business channel also. In the small business channel, that's small businesses only compete amongst themselves. So in the HCAT solution, small business and other than small, not large, they would compete fairly against each other, whereas instead of being separate. And then we also have certain, we have a certain amount of awards that will be set aside for the socioeconomic concerns. Okay. So, how it's going to work, and some of you may be familiar, since it's on the street right now, and proposals are due on the 17th, I believe. We are having industry tell us what they want us to look at. We are doing a self-score evaluation worksheet, and the primary weight of our scoring revolves on industry past performance. So you provide the projects that you want us to look at. We have asked for dry in the mouth. So we, of course, are asking for examples and documentation to substantiate the projects that you have sent in for us to look at. And we take the scores, we look at the top 40, we evaluate them, and then we reshuffle to see if we agree with the top 40, and then we basically make the award of the top 40 vendors in each pool. So ultimately, we'll have up to 160 contracts between HCATS and HCATS SB for award. If there's any ties at the 40th slot, the ties come in. As I said, past performance is really the key driver for the points in the solution. We have some other areas in there, such as certifications and the like. We're using those to serve more as tiebreakers when the scores are tight, but really what we're looking for are industry partners who've done the work, who are experts in the work, and so the government can get the best of the best working on their HR and training requirements. So, working to build the vehicle, we worked in tandem with our agency small business utilization offices. We also work closely with the Small Business Administration. We created the 2 contract vehicles, one set aside for small business. Again, the NAICS and the pool structure ensure that the pools are sized for the right size businesses, so they know where they would fall within the vehicles. And then on the unrestricted vehicle, we have requested that large businesses have a 50% subcontracting goal. So we are looking to have as much collaboration with small business on these vehicles as we can get. We do not have any restrictions on teaming arrangements or the subcontracting arrangements. We are encouraging small business basically to market themselves to federal agencies and even to the larger businesses. We find that large businesses are often looked for smaller businesses to fill in unique requirements that they may or may not have, or have the specialization. And large businesses, as we've seen under HCATS, they actually hold a lot of networking activities for the small businesses. GSA also helps facilitate to ensure that small businesses are aware of what's going on. They have opportunities to compete. So I would keep that in mind for you as you move forward, particularly if you're a small business. And then large businesses, there's a resource for you that is basically untapped. In the post-war environment, we are looking for evolution. There will be an on-ramping opportunity. Of course, we don't know what it is at this point. We're going to conduct annual reviews of HCATS and HCATS small business, see what's working, see what isn't working. We will continue our commodity team meetings to find out again what's working, what isn't working. Changes happen in this industry all the time. Are there nuances that we need to consider? Do we need to create a new pool? Those are the types of things that we'll look at throughout the life of the vehicle. Also, it's anticipated this vehicle that is going to have a base year of 5 years with a 5-year option period. At the end of the base year, we'll ask the small businesses to recertify their size standards, and then we're creating a pathway for them to graduate into the unrestricted side of the house. And then that'll also afford new small businesses to participate because we'll fill the slots that are now open. The requirements that were with the original contract will be the same. They will have to meet the minimum score of the top 40 to enter the pool. So the minimum score, that 40th score will be the entree number as we on-ramp and ask for new vendors to participate at the option period. So the benefits that, for using HCATs, shorter acquisition. We anticipate a typical acquisition or task order written against these contracts would take 90 to 120 days, whether it's a self-service solution or procurement as a service. 90 to 120 days, as opposed to building a new vehicle, which can take, up to 2 years or longer. Since we're driving everything on our vendor partner past experience, we know that we're going to have highly qualified, experienced industry partners providing services for government agencies. And we have tried to allow a competition that meets competition in the how do I want to say this? I had it up, it was so easy before. Maximum competition practicable, that was the phrase I was looking for. So within the pools, you would compete amongst the 40. We don't anticipate vendors or coming back with, or having 40 vendors provide a quote. We're baselining that with Oasis, and they're averaging about 3 to 5, depending on the solution, of what comes back to the ordering contracting officers. So for industry, again, we wanted to make sure that you have the opportunity to really sell yourselves, give your best examples of human capital and training work within the solicitation. We want to capture your expertise, and again, with the NAICS codes, we want to make sure that it's sized appropriately for participating contracting or contractors, and allow the opportunity to graduate into unrestricted and to allow as maximum teaming arrangements with onboarding as always is an option in the future. So let me just kind of highlight this again. As we move forward, keep an eye on the Interact page for HCATs. That is where we communicate. We have all the links to FedBizOps in the HCATs webpage. If we're looking to, as we move along in the future, as we're looking to conduct on-ramp, we'll be soliciting feedback from industry and from government through this vehicle. We'll also be talking to the professional councils, we'll be talking to the Chico councils, that sort of thing. But for the easiest way to find out what's going on and to keep your finger on the pulse of HCATs, make sure you sign up for the GSA Interact HCATs group. I've also included links for the FedBizOps solicitations for HCATs and HCATs small business. And because we're under, we have our RFP on the street right now, we are encouraging any and all questions to be directed to our HCATS email box at hcatsquestions@gsa.gov. So, with that, I would like to open the floor for questions on this vehicle.
Questions in the room first?
Yeah, thanks for sharing. This has been my life for the last year and a half. So,
Mine too.
information rich. How do you see this affecting the market as it relates to the professional services schedule? And so I ask that in the sense of, now that contracting officers will have 2 vehicles to sort of choose from to do some human capital and training type of work, how do you see this kind of shifting the market? So if I'm a contracting officer and I'm in that position of choosing, how do I issue an acquisition for training? I know HCATs exist, but then at the same time, I know there are training sins on the professional services schedule. Which one do I pick and why? Is there just put it broadly? I mean, I know you don't.
Okay. The gentleman in the room is asking how contracting officers will know which vehicle to use, for example, professional services over the HCATS vehicles. And professional services schedule is great, but it's very broad. It's more for general business type work. HCATS is specifically geared towards human capital and training solutions. It's not a schedule, so you have flexibility with your contract type. If you're looking for labor hour, time and materials, firm fixed price, cost reimbursable, that sort of thing, you would use the HCATS vehicle. You could get broader experience under the professional services schedule. However, the expertise knowledge is, we've created a niche with this particular contract. So the way we've built our evaluation is to ensure we get the experts in human capital and training on this particular vehicle. Professional services schedule is just a firm fixed price schedule. We also have another schedule, HR services, I believe it's 738X, which is commercial off the shelf. It's good, but if it's for something that can just be like a CAM presentation or something like that, there's flexibility and customization specifically to that ordering office that this solution will provide that the others cannot.
Got it. So professional services schedule will be kind of more COTS, commercial off the shelf, commodity type of buy, and HCATS will kind of be a little bit more targeted. Like you said, kind of customized, specific.
Exactly. And this would not be a scheduled buy. It wouldn't be under FAR 8.
Okay. Oh, this would be a FAR 15.
Yeah. Because we're a MAC contract. We're not a schedules contract. And there's that distinction too. Hi.
Hello. There was a lot of good information about how the vehicle is going to be used, but has there been any feedback from the government side saying like they will be using this vehicle, like how much it will be used? Because I just don't know. Like I haven't been able to see like a pipeline or anything like that for this vehicle. Has there been any, with Oasis, they had an MOU with Air Force saying we're going to dedicate this much resources to the Oasis vehicle. Has there been anything like that with HCATS?
The question is, who's going to be, what kind of commitment have we gotten for this vehicle? Okay. Oasis is huge,
right.
And I mean, there's a lot of money tied into the contracts that Oasis does. Now, with us building the partnership with OPM on this vehicle, we are guaranteed OPM business, and OPM has over 50% of the market share in human capital. The second would be Army. We do have a commitment letter from them. However, Army is watching carefully to see how we're building this vehicle. They're considering they're in the process of building their own vehicle, but if this one fits their needs, then there will be consideration for this vehicle. I know, of course, we're hoping that they will. OMB is hoping that they will. They haven't made their final decision because they really want to see what the end game's going to look like, which is fair. We also have, we've been working with our commodity teams. We have commitments from HHS, DHS, of course GSA, and there's another agency, forgive me, agency, I can't remember what it is off the top of my head. But we are a smaller solution. We anticipate $2 billion annually, and quite frankly, that's a task order for Oasis. So.
Okay, that's good, because before we're not sure yet.
Right.
So this is definitely more information than previously.
Oh, good.
I think with PMA expired, there's a bit of a build in the pipeline as well as the projects coming off of that contract.
Yeah, that's a fair statement. Okay, you had another question?
Yeah. So this is interesting. I'm asking the question from the perspective of the small business community. So companies are at various stages of maturity in terms of understanding what their niche is in the market. For small businesses that do human capital work, training work, who are unfortunate enough to not get on this vehicle when it's awarded. Right now, our perspective is we're of a mindset of we might as well close our shop because we won't be able to gain access to those opportunities as they come through, and we will have to work through other prime contractors, and we'll be at their mercy in order to gain access to the work and to be able to respond. The question is, how do we? Is that the right mindset to take on? And if not, why? Why not? And then the second question is what there will be provisions for onboarding and on-ramping, and what do those look like?
Okay, the question is, correct me if I mess this up.
Sorry, long-winded.
Basically, what opportunity is there for small business? The impression is that they might be closed out if they don't get a contract. Is that a fair statement?
Yep, that's fair.
Okay, and then, I'm sorry, the second part was?
The second question is, you mentioned there will be some on-ramping and onboarding later on. And what does that look like?
Right, the option for upcoming on-ramping. Now, well, we're not sure what the on-ramping piece, I can answer that one because, well, I'll start with the easy one first.
Okay.
We don't know what that looks like yet because we're still in our infancy. But as I said, we know that this industry, the requirements change with technology, things become different. There's gonna, the workforce is evolving. So do we know there's gonna be opportunity? Yes. Are we sure what it is at this point? No. We don't have a crystal ball, but that's why we are maintaining the relationships with the Chico Council, with our industry forums, with small businesses and our commodity teams to find out what's going on. We'll be monitoring the CPARs to find out why, if there was a negative review, why, and if it's something that we can affect, then we will. It might just be because they're asking for something that's new to the industry, for example. We're going to be actively monitoring everything that happens under this vehicle during the base year, so we have a successful option year and then HCATs too, when the time comes. Right now we just see it as very evolving. So what that looks like today, I don't know. Will we be watching it? Yes. In a year from now, we may have something else to tell you. So, and then do we feel that small business, if you're a small business and you don't have a contract, should you close shop? Absolutely not.
Right. Well, let me add precision to the question.
Okay.
If you're a small business in the business of training and human capital, the logical consequence of not being on this vehicle is that you will not gain insight and access to the opportunities as they come through.
All the opportunities should be posted on FedBizOps. So you'll hear about opportunities there. That said, as you would with any contract that you participate on, or a contracting vehicle, or multiple award vehicle, you should be marketing yourself. I would encourage building relationships with the big boys, so there's subcontracting opportunity there. As you learn about opportunities, you may have, a small business finds out about a lot of different opportunities that big businesses may not always know. You may figure, just because you're a small business, you could still partner with the large business and have that be a business practice to continue doing work, granted as a sub. This is not a mandatory source. So while the government, of course we want the government agencies to use it, it's not mandated, it's not required, there's nothing that would preclude them from using a different solution or even conducting open market buys. Again, it really just comes down to your marketing strategy and how you envision growing your business and what areas you want to focus on. HCATs may not be the best fit for all agencies. HCATs may not be the best fit for small business, but if it's something that you can bring value to, we want to hear about it. It could be an opportunity for us to even expand the solution. I would just maintain the open communication and just continue to market yourself to all interested parties, which there's a tab on FedBizOps, find out who's interested, make sure that you're out there, especially if you have a fine-tuned area of training or human capital knowledge that a lot of people don't have. That would make you very desirable to be a teaming partner. So there is opportunity. It's just a question of making sure that other companies know that you're out there. If you don't get a contract.
Right, you're only shut out of not bidding on the small business award, but each of the large contractors who will get an award under the large business have very aggressive subcontracting plans. And so it would appear that there's actually a very rich area for small businesses to hit up those awardees, because each of them will have to make awards against women-owned, veteran, all of those socioeconomics. So
Thank you. To my point. Thank you. Okay. Anyone else?
Other questions in the room?
Phone? Anyone
Let's
on
go
the
to the phone. Anyone on the phone have questions for Alexandra?
Hi, question on the phone. This is Tim Lagan with Monster Government Solutions. Just wondering what the timeline is for the award on HCATS.
We are looking at the March timeframe for award.
Okay, thank you.
And okay, you're welcome.
I'm just curious. Thank you.
Anyone else on the line?
Is there any thought as far as following task orders after award is made? I mean, I know you said that there's interest and that a lot of that's going to, perhaps come from folks who are rolling off of TMA from OPM who will come onto this particular IDIQ. Any sense on how quick that's going to happen? I mean, once the award is made, are you expecting a flood of interested parties to put, tasks out? Or
We are talking to a couple of organizations now who are watching when this is going to be awarded so they can start with issuing their task orders. OPM will be using this basically from day one. They're chomping at the bit. Last week we had an extension. They're like, we want it now. So they have the work. TMA is they are in the process of phasing out TMA as it's getting to the end of the contract vehicle. OPM, yes, intends to use it from day one. I know we have some internal offices within GSA that we're looking at that are watching this very carefully because they want to start using it as soon as possible. I don't want to speak for Army, but I dare say since due to their level of interest, it wouldn't surprise me if they start using it right away while their other vehicle is, if they decide to build their other vehicle, then we're a year and a half ahead of them. So I can see us being gap coverage for them. And then just other areas, smaller offices, or smaller agencies, we've briefed them on it. They know they have a need, but they don't know what it is yet. So probably not as fast as, say, OPM, GSA, Army, but probably within the initial year.
Great. When you mentioned the March award, I feel like you were about to say other things as well.
Just the typical, if we have protests, it'll be extended, probably 100 to 120 days, because that's the timeline. But yeah, we always throw in that caveat because, you said March. Yes, we said March, but we got protests. So there is the potential of it being later. Hopefully not, though. So. Okay, anyone else?
Any other questions from the phone? Any others from the room?
Oh, one more?
Will the PowerPoint presentations be made available?
I believe so. I think they're going to be shared.
Yes, we shipped them to everyone who had registered for the event, and if you didn't get one, just give me your card and I'll send it to you.
Okay. They were asking for the PowerPoints if they were going to be available.
So anyone who's online that did not get a copy of the presentation and who would like either of the two presentations, please send a note to Robert robert.clarke, C-L-A-R-K-E, @monster.com, and say, please send me the presentations and I'll get them to you this afternoon. Alexandra, thank you very much. This
Oh, my
was,
pleasure. Thank you.
Very helpful, and as you see, interest in the room, interest on the phone, and this is very helpful.
Good, I'm glad. Thank you. Thank you for the opportunity.
You're welcome. I have 3 quick business topics, particularly of interest to industry members, both in the room and on the phone. We sent out we sent out a note about a month ago asking people if you had any suggestions for topics that you would like us to address in the coming year, and we got a good list. We have now run those by, or we're in the process of running them by our government advisory panel, and I can tell you, looking at the list, the next year, which sort of aligns to the calendar year, we're going to have some great topics, great presenters. In this new move to the community of interest format, we got a government, I think they call it in the new structure, a government mentor, Joni Newhart, who is at OMB, and Joni's made some good suggestions as to topics. Joni was actually instrumental in getting these 2 presenters, and Joni can help us reach out and get to people if we want someone from a particular department or agency to speak. Having her clout as one of the requesters will help us. So again, if there are any suggestions, areas you'd like to see us address in these kinds of meetings, for simplicity, you can send a note to robert.clarke@monster.com and just say, I'd like us to talk about this topic or this topic or this topic, and we'll work on that. And the we is, and I'll just call out again to your attention, the December meeting is going to be on the cybersecurity workforce, and we have a list of, we already have about 5 presenters signed up from government for that. And we're working with Joni for the January session, which is going to be on the acquisition workforce. And the we who tends to work on these, the leadership of the community of interest is composed of an industry chair, who's currently Bill Fisher, an industry vice chair, who's currently Lisa Taylor, government chair, who is Mika Cross, communications chair, that's me, Debbie Brown is the programs chair. The 5 of us tend to get these things put out for you. But the industry chair and vice chair positions are 2-year positions, and they are expiring at the end of next month. So we are soliciting from any member company nominations to become the new chair and the new vice chair. It's a great position. It doesn't take a lot of work. More of the work gets done at Debbie and my level. But in terms of timing, it probably takes between 2 and 4 hours a month. And it gives you a great opportunity to meet with government leaders representing an organization as opposed to just your own firm. And basically you get to see some people and talk about some things that they probably wouldn't just on your own business card, because people will take calls from ACT, IAC that they won't necessarily take from individuals. So we are soliciting and encouraging any industry members who would like to run for the position of chair or vice chair to send an email to, I'm going to ask you for simplicity's sake because I can remember. Actually, we'll send it to John. Please send it to jshaw@actiac.org. That's John Shaw, but jshaw@actiac.org, and just say, I'm interested in running for the chair or for the vice chair. And he'll get in touch with you all you have to do is be a member of a member firm. And the position serves up to 2 years. If you wanted to, you could stop at the end of a year. But we would really appreciate it. I think the reception from government has been very good to the work that we're doing. We are at a point now where we are regularly getting requests from different government organizations when they want some information. We just provided input to a cybersecurity paper that's going to OMB, and we're doing everything that we can within the community of interest to drive and create new knowledge that is of value to the government, so they'll be more interested in participating with us. So that's all I had to bring to your attention today. Any topics that either of you are interested in? At one point, we used to have a little go around the room for industry-related events. I'll just point out that I don't remember the specific dates of it, but early in December, the Human Capital Management HCMF conference is taking place at the Hilton at the Mark Center. That's the only human capital related event that I'm aware of in the next month or so. But if anybody else knows any that we should all be aware of, please share. Not hearing other select suggestions. Thank you all for coming.